The pub was busy. It always was at this time of day. Most people had knocked off work by this time and were enjoying their evenings having a few drinks and socializing. There was no tension in the air, aside from the air around one patron, sitting quietly in the corner and keeping to themselves. Velik, the bartender, had just finished serving another customer and was cleaning a glass with a rag. His expression was one of boredom. It wasn't much fun watching other people get intoxicated and have a great time doing so while one had to remain sober and sensible. The small degree of resentment he felt towards the pub goers had somewhat diminished from when he had first started working here. I guess it is true. You can get used to anything given enough exposure, he thought. There was a noise of exclamation from one of the patrons sat at the bar. Velik decided to alleviate his boredom by eavesdropping on the conversation the exclaimer was having with two others sat at the bar with him. Velik shifted as subtly as possible towards them, stopping only when he was in hearing distance. "Oh way," he heard. "There is no way they can keep going at, well, anything that long." "It's true," said another of the bar sitters. "I have seen it firsthand." "Also, their ability to recover from almost anything is remarkable," said the third. Velik, still industriously buffing the glass in his hand, tried in vain to discern what they were talking about. "What do you mean?" said the first one. It was at this point Velik spotted the lone, brooding drinker stand and began to make his way towards the bar. "Well, I mean what I said. Physical injuries and mental traumas. They have helped a great many others from all species to recover from similar things." So, Velik thought, they're talking about a species. "Yes, but remarkable how?" the first speaker asked again, swaying slightly on her bar stool. "Well, I mean things like broken bones, concussions, even things like organ failure or having a limb forcibly removed. Granted, for those more extreme injuries, they require intensive medical treatment, but they have a higher survivability rate than any other species. In recovering from mental traumas such as losing a loved one, they show an increased ability to..." The approaching brooder had by now reached the bar. Velik reluctantly walked away from the conversation he was listening in on, letting it trail off into the background noise of the pub. "What can I get for you, sir?" he asked politely. "Another old Hevert," the man, a Mafal, said. "Coming right up, sir." It was as Velik was otherwise preoccupied that the first speaker, further down the bar, spoke up loud enough for her voice to carry. "There's no way humans can do that," she shouted incredulously. Velik turned and looked at her, finally realizing they were talking about humans. Of course, Velik had heard about them, but he had never met many, and when he had, it was only for brief periods of time, usually as long as it took them to order a drink. If what he had overheard was true, then it was no wonder they had forced the Morphal Empire to accept a truce. Velik finished pouring the drink, and turned back around to the Morphal behind him, drink in hand. "Here you are, sir," Velik said, placing the glass down. "That'll be..." He trailed off, as he saw the look in the Morphal's eyes. It was the look of hatred and disgust. The anger that simmered behind those eyes chilled Velik to his very core. It was the sort of anger that could drive a fist through a slab on concrete. It wasn't the blind, heat-of-the-moment anger that flared up violently before being quelled. No. This was the kind of anger that had been built up over years upon years. Heat-of-the-moment anger was uncontrollable. Those under its grip made mistakes. If, in a fight, they were sloppy and flailed wildly. The fury behind those eyes was controlled, held tightly on a lead lest it burn whole countries. In short, the look Velik saw in that face was one that promised violent retribution, if deemed necessary by the look-giver. "On the house?" Velik squeaked. The Morphal didn't respond, instead taking the drink, downing it in one, leaving some coins on the counter, and turning towards the exit. "Thank you," Velik called after him. The Morphal once again failed to respond. His quick, confident steps towards the exit only faltered when the door opened and in stepped a human. Velik saw the Morphal's body tense and his hands clenched. This might get rather messy. The moorfowl were a proud species, very honor-bound and absolutely ruthless in whatever they ended up doing with their lives. From fierce warriors to shrewd businessmen, to cunning lawyers to relentless inventors and engineers. The moorfowl may not be the leaders in all of these fields, the best of the best, but as a species they were very good at every aspect of modern life in the galaxy. It was, therefore, a bit of a surprise when their war with humanity ended with the moorfowl as the ones that conceded the victory. There was a pregnant pause as the two members of the formerly at-war species stared at each other, before the human excelled and began stalking towards the bar, eyes drifting away from the moorfowl, who turned to keep the human in front of him the whole time. The human reached the bar and began to look over the labels of the bottles on the shelf behind Velek. "You're going to serve this filth?" It took Velek a second to realize that the moorfowl had been addressing him. "Well, yes. Why is that?" said Velek, trying his best to ease any tension in the room with his tone alone. "It's a human, that's why." Velek saw the human tense up again, his jaw clenching tightly. "De-escalate the situation, now," thought Velek desperately. "I'm sorry, but we don't like to discriminate here," he tried. "You should, against scum like that. Civilized people don't deserve to be around such a dishonorable race as humans." "Why don't you try addressing me as if I'm actually here, mate?" said the human coldly. "Because you shouldn't be here," sneered the moorfowl. "Yeah? According to who, said the human, spinning around to square off with his counterpart. "Me," said the moorfowl, pointing at himself. Now, gentlemen," Velek tried, despite the growing tension in the room. "There's no need to go starting any trouble here." "Oh, don't worry. I won't start anything. Just like humanity didn't start the war." "You deserve to be put in your place," shouted the moorfowl, finally losing a degree of control. By now, all the conversations in the pub had ceased, and all eyes were on the pair of belligerents. Then tension that, before, had kept itself to the back corner the moorfowl had occupied, had now spread its way across the entire establishment, growing in size as it did so. "For what? Not kowtowing to you? Standing firm despite your demands? Your people truly are pathetic." There was no shout of rage, no hesitation from the moorfowl. He simply leapt at the human with a seething fury that demanded retribution. He slammed into the human's chest, knocking them both against the bar. People nearby scattered out the way as the human and the moorfowl crashed to the floor in a tangle, swinging at each other as best they could before disentangling themselves from each other. The human was first to his feet, rolling across the floor away from the moorfowl before springing up. He darted back towards his still rising opponent and struck with a fist. The moorfowl, clearly experienced in fighting, saw it coming and threw an arm in the way to block it. He was still off balance though, so the blow knocked him back down. The human didn't let up, angling a booted foot to connect with the once again prone form of his people's former enemy. Velek had just reached the silent alarm that was installed in the bar and pressed it, praying that the authorities were nearby. The moorfowl endured a few kicks and a couple of punches before he managed to roll away from the human, under a table and out from the other side. He got back up to his feet and took a fighting stance, before the human managed to rush around the table to strike again. There was a pause of a second, as the pair glared at each other. Then the moorfowl shoved the table, hard. The edge of the table jabbed into the human's midriff, and the force was enough to wind him slightly. The moorfowl didn't wait for the human to recover. He jumped up onto the table and dived at the human, piling the pair of them to the ground again, and began raining blows down upon the human's head, who was blocking with both arms. The moorfowl, seeing he wasn't getting through the human's defenses, opted to instead try to strike at his exposed flanks. This change in tactic shifted the moorfowl's balance, which allowed the human to buck his hips and throw the moorfowl off of him. The pair both chose to roll away from the other and regain their footing again. "I'm going to fucking kill you!" the moorfowl hissed. From the angle he was standing, Velek was able to see the human's face as his mouth curled upwards at the edges and split open to reveal 2 rows of fat teeth. Velek had thought that the look in the moorfowl's eyes had been intimidating. It was nothing compared to that rictus plastering the human's face. If the moorfowl's face had promised that countries would burn, The humans promised that not even death itself would stay his hand. "You're fucking welcome to try," the human teased. This time, there was a cry of rage as the Morphal charged. Unfortunately for him, his intoxication, combined with the human's readiness, proved a bad combination. The human sidestepping the Morphal's rush and brought his elbow around to connect with his opponent's head. The Morphal crashed down, bouncing off a table and rolling with the momentum of his charge. He didn't get up again, instead opting to roll around and groan in pain and confusion. The human stalked over to him. The Morphal watched him approach, the brain fog from his blow to the head clearly not yet past. The human stopped a couple of feet away from his downed foe and looked at him silently. "Well?" asked the Morphal, after his head had cleared, and it became obvious the human wasn't going to make another move. "Well, what?" "Kill me, then!" The human cocked his head to one side and studied the Morphal for a long moment. "No," he said simply, and turned and walked away. The Morphal looked after him, his confusion growing stronger. Velik watched as the human approached the bar and resumed looking at the drinks behind the bar. Velik was too stunned, both from the fight and from its abrupt end, to say anything. The Morphal's face contorted into anger once again. "You coward!" he shouted. "What the fuck did you just say to me?" The quiet calm in the human's voice got through to the Morphal. It appeared that, despite everything that had transpired up until now, those two words had angered the human more than anything else so far. "You call me a coward because I let you live? A braver being would finish me off—" "No!" interrupted the human. The shout echoed across the otherwise silent room. "A lesser man would kill you here and now. Let me ask you this, is it cowardice to let you live, knowing that you will want revenge on me? To live with the knowledge that you could come after me at any moment? You could strike at me when I'm not expecting it. Shoot me, stab me, push me off a ledge." The human's voice dropped to a whispered hiss. "I can live with all of that knowledge, live with the uncertain fear of it all, because I am not a coward." "Do not lie to yourself. You're weak, just like the rest of your species. Too afraid to finish off a foe." "If we were truly that afraid of you, we would have killed you all, and rid ourselves of the nightmares you bring, in a display of pure cowardice. We would exterminate every last mortal in the galaxy out of the fear of what you might do, but we didn't, and we won't." The human leaned towards the Morphal, their eyes locking together as they both watched for the other to flinch first. "Let me tell you right now, mercy is for the strong. The weak and fearful can't handle it, or afford it."